Once, Dame Dash was the king of Harlem hustle, a visionary who stood shoulder to shoulder with Jay-Z, shaping an era that defined hip-hop. But somewhere along the way, everything changed. Today, that same mogul is filing a $300 million lawsuit, beefing with Cam'ron, clashing with 50 Cent, and getting clowned by the Breakfast Club. So, what happened? How did the man who preached ownership and power end up fighting for relevance and respect? This isn't just another hip-hop feud, it's the story of a fallen giant trying to find his way back. Dame Dash's recent actions have sparked concern among fans and industry insiders alike. Once recognized as one of hip-hop's most influential executives, he now appears to be spiraling, caught up in public feuds with Cam'ron, 50 Cent, and even Charlamagne Tha God on the Breakfast Club. For many, it's a disappointing turn for a man who helped shape the golden age of Rockefeller Records. To his Harlem roots, it feels even more personal, as people from his own community see his behavior as tarnishing the city's legacy. Things came to a head when Dame filed a staggering $300 million lawsuit against Cam'ron, only to later reflect on the situation with a surprising dose of humility. Sitting alone by the water, he questioned his own motives, admitting that the feud existed only because they never truly talked. Despite Cam'ron publicly declaring he wouldn't speak to him, Dame confessed that respected Harlem elders urged him to let it go, calling the whole ordeal embarrassing. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, a brief pause in the chaos that hinted at self-reflection and perhaps reconciliation. Dame Dash appears to be taking a step toward peace, expressing his desire to put an end to the long-running feud with Cam'ron. He revealed that Daniel had already reached out to Cam, opening the door for resolution. For Dame, the issue isn't just personal, it's about the bigger picture. He explained that public conflicts between black men only serve to entertain and empower outsiders who profit from their division. They use us to tear each other down, he said, acknowledging that such disputes often become tools for exploitation. Determined not to fall into that trap, Dame emphasized that he'd rather apologize and move forward, even going as far as to say he felt embarrassed for Harlem and wanted to make things right. Reflecting on Harlem's culture, he admitted that people from his community often handle issues through confrontation, sometimes even violence, but he made it clear that he no longer wanted any part of that. "I can't be violent, and I don't want any of my friends to be violent," he said, noting that his focus now is on keeping others out of jail. Instead of physical retaliation, Dame views lawsuits as his modern version of self-defense, a way to stand his ground without crossing dangerous lines. Drawing inspiration from The Godfather Part 2, he pointed out that while the Italian mobster killed his own brother, the Black Godfather should teach his instead. Ultimately, Dame called for a conversation and a chance to settle differences face-to-face, even distancing himself from the project Cam and 50 Cent are involved in. His words carried a tone of maturity and accountability, a sign that he may be ready to grow past the chaos. Dame Dash is extending an olive branch, calling for unity and collaboration instead of conflict. He expressed that if he and Cam'ron could move past their differences and come together to create something, whether a TV show, a film, or another meaningful project, it would send a powerful message to the world. "If we can show people that two brothers who were beefing can come together and build, we'll prove everyone wrong," he said, acknowledging how society often celebrates division within the black community. With humility, Dame apologized to his OGs for any embarrassment he caused, explaining that he only wanted an honest conversation. It wasn't until he filed a lawsuit that Cam finally responded, and now Dame wants to turn that moment into an opportunity for peace. He urged Daniel to help arrange a proper sit-down, inviting Cam to bring anyone he wanted, even extending an open invitation to 50 Cent. "Let's stop talking about each other on social media like clowns," Dame said. "Let's talk like real men." In his view, the internet has become the new street, a place where unnecessary drama thrives, and he's ready to step away from that energy entirely. Shifting his attention to Revolt and iHeart, Dame expressed frustration over communication issues, pointing out that he doesn't work for them but with them. "I'm the chairman when I bring my content," he clarified. "I don't talk to their staff, I talk to mine." In that moment, Dame positioned himself not as an employee but as an independent leader determined to regain control of his narrative while promoting growth, respect, and accountability. Dame Dash continued his call for peace, suggesting that even the Breakfast Club team could join him for a sit-down conversation. He presented the idea as an opportunity for open dialogue, a chance for everyone involved to clear the air, address long-standing tensions, and move forward with mutual respect. For Dame, the goal wasn't just to squash individual beefs, but to set an example of how grown men in the industry can handle disagreements without turning them into lifelong grudges. He emphasized that too many relationships in hip-hop have been destroyed by pride, ego, and miscommunication, and that it's time for that cycle to end. However, Dame also made it clear that while he's open to peace, he's not naive. "I'm not going to stop responding. This is the only way I know how to fight now," he explained, revealing a shift in his approach to conflict. Gone are the days of public outbursts or heated confrontations. Instead, Dame says he's learned to rely on structure, legality, and strategy. If someone crosses the line, he'll handle it in court, not in the streets. It's a perspective that shows a mix of growth and frustration. The realization that, as an older man in the industry, his battles now require intellect and composure rather than emotion. Still, he sent a firm warning: no one would be able to line him up or set him up. The phrase, often used in street vernacular, signals that Dame is cautious about hidden agendas. In his mind, extending a hand for peace doesn't mean letting his guard down. Over the years, he's seen alliances form and dissolve in seconds, often fueled by personal gain or industry politics. This time, Dame wants to make sure that any conversation comes from a genuine place. He doesn't want apologies made for show or reconciliation built on convenience. He wants truth, accountability, and authenticity. When it came to who would be welcome at this proposed meeting, Dame didn't mince words. While he expressed openness to speaking with figures like 50 Cent or Cameron, he drew a firm line when it came to Charlemagne the God. "He's not invited," Dame said bluntly, adding that the sit-down was only for real men, those capable of facing disagreements directly, without insults, deflection, or manipulation. It was a pointed statement, clearly aimed at Charlemagne's past comments and interviews, which Dame has often described as disrespectful and misleading. To Dame, being a real man means taking accountability, standing on principles, and maintaining respect even in conflict. It's about maturity, something he feels has been missing from many public exchanges in recent years. By setting boundaries on who could attend, Dame wasn't just excluding someone. He was defining the tone of the conversation he wanted to have. This wasn't going to be a shouting match or a viral moment. It was supposed to be a serious dialogue between men willing to move with integrity. In a broader sense, his call reflects a man wrestling with both pride and purpose. Dame Dash has long been known for his confidence, sometimes perceived as arrogance, but beneath that exterior is a deep desire for fairness and recognition. His willingness to sit down and talk signals a man who, despite past grudges, still believes in resolution. Yet, his insistence on controlling the terms shows that he hasn't entirely let go of his combative instincts. Whether this meeting ever happens remains to be seen, but one thing is clear: Dame wants to reclaim the narrative, on his own terms, and with his dignity intact. He insisted that his willingness to make peace shouldn't be mistaken for weakness, stressing that public feuds send the wrong message to younger generations. "We're in front of a lot of people," he said. "This isn't the right example." Yet despite his intentions, his tone carried an edge, a blend of pride, frustration, and the street-born instinct to stay guarded. As expected, 50 Cent couldn't resist jumping into the conversation. The G-Unit mogul responded with his trademark humor, posting a video of Dame Dash rocking back and forth on a swing in his backyard, Crocs on his feet, adding a sarcastic caption: "I agree with Dame. It's 100% better to work together. We should sit down and figure out how to move forward. I believe we can create a path to more success." He ended the post with a jab, quoting Cameron's words: "Oh wait, Cam just said F Dame and his fake ChatGPT." In true 50 Cent fashion, the response blended mockery with wit, turning what could have been a moment of reconciliation into another viral laugh for the internet. The situation has now taken an even more chaotic turn. After Dame Dash's $300 million lawsuit against Cameron, 50 Cent jumped in once again, this time mocking the entire ordeal. He openly declared, "F you, Dame," poking fun at the massive lawsuit and highlighting the irony in Dame's recent claims of wealth and power. Just days earlier, Dame had insisted he was rich, the chairman of Revolt, and in control of his business empire. Yet now, he's being ridiculed for filing what many see as an unrealistic lawsuit. Critics were quick to point out that neither Dame nor Cameron has ever been anywhere near $300 million, calling the number nothing more than a publicity stunt designed to grab headlines. Even Revolt's actual chairman publicly denied Dame's claims of authority at the network, while Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club took his own shots, calling Dame Debt Dash and questioning whether he even had the money he claimed. That jab came after Dame repeatedly hurled homophobic slurs during their feud, further damaging his credibility. The once feared mogul now looks cornered, a shadow of the dominant figure he was in the early days. Observers note that what makes the downfall even more striking is Dame's inability to recognize his loss of leverage. At one point, he had the power to shape hip-hop culture, control deals, and command respect across the industry. But as time moved on, that influence faded. And yet, the mentality of a boss who once ruled the game never did. Many argue that Dame's behavior is driven by that old sense of power, even though the reality no longer matches. It's a sobering reminder that in business, and in life, knowing when you've lost leverage is just as important as knowing when you have it. There comes a point in every career, especially in entertainment, when you have to accept that you're not the same person you once were. That realization doesn't have to be negative, it's simply part of growth. The rules of the game change, and those who thrive are the ones who recognize that evolution and adjust accordingly. In Dame Dash's case, it seems he hasn't fully come to terms with that shift. The strategies that once made him successful in the early 2000s, commanding rooms, moving with bravado, and operating through personal influence, don't carry the same weight in today's industry. What worked then simply doesn't work now. To understand this, you only have to look at hip-hop's evolution. Back in the 80s and 90s, artists like Too Short and E40 built their empires from the ground up, selling tapes straight out of their trunks. Master P later perfected that model, and Cash Money Records followed suit, proving that grassroots hustle could create millionaires. But today's landscape is completely different. Success no longer comes from hand-to-hand sales or street credibility. It's about streaming numbers, digital presence, and global reach. The entire system has shifted from physical grind to digital dominance. Those who fail to evolve get left behind, and that's where Dame seems stuck. The same bold, aggressive tactics that once earned him respect now make him look out of touch. In contrast, 50 Cent represents the opposite trajectory. He recognized the shift early, transitioning from rap to television, film, and business ventures that cemented his status as a mogul beyond music. While Dame clings to an old blueprint, 50 has rewritten his, proving that real power isn't about holding on to the past, but mastering reinvention. 50 Cent's evolution in the entertainment world perfectly illustrates what it means to adapt. Once a dominant force in rap, he recognized early on that the music landscape was changing, and instead of clinging to the past, he pivoted. Today, 50 is not defined by albums or mixtapes, but by his massive success in television and film. That's the mark of someone who understands how the market shifts and how to stay relevant when the rules change. Dame Dash, on the other hand, seems stuck in the past, relying on old strategies and outdated bravado that no longer hold weight. When you fail to adapt, you eventually lose leverage, and the power you once had begins to fade. Instead of moving with the times, Dame continues to act as though his name alone can open doors. That's why his recent behavior, trying to rally people for joint projects or reconciliation, comes off less like leadership and more like desperation. The truth is, Cameron doesn't need him anymore. Neither does 50 Cent. They've built independent empires, secured their own millions, and moved forward without him. What makes it harder for Dame is his unwillingness to accept accountability. Rather than reflecting inward, he often points fingers outward, blaming the system or outsiders for his struggles. But 50 Cent, who has mastered the art of navigating both the streets and corporate spaces, sees through that. Once you cross him publicly, there's no rebuilding that bridge. In his eyes, an apology from Dame doesn't come across as sincere, it looks like a play for relevance. And there's a harsh truth in that dynamic. When someone from your past, especially someone who once held power, tries to reconnect after losing influence, it's rarely out of genuine goodwill. More often than not, they return because they need something: leverage, access, or validation. What Dame fails to grasp is that in this new era, relationships built on necessity, not respect, carry no weight. The problem with Dame Dash's approach is that his so-called apologies come off as manipulative rather than genuine. People like 50 Cent can see straight through that. They recognize when someone is reaching out not from humility, but from desperation. 50 understands that Dame's sudden calls for unity aren't rooted in sincerity. They are born out of necessity. Dame needs relevance, and he sees aligning with powerful figures like 50 Cent or Cameron as his only way back into the spotlight. But as 50 knows, once someone burns a bridge and then tries to return only after losing leverage, their motives are rarely pure. If Dame truly wanted to reconnect, he had every opportunity to approach things differently. He could have reached out privately, humbled himself, and said, "Look, I'd like to collaborate. How can we make it work?" Even if 50 Cent had brushed him off, it would have been out of principle, not pettiness. Instead, Dame chose to come at him publicly, throwing shade and trying to use lawsuits as leverage. Now that the backlash has hit, his attempt to make peace feels hollow. The reality is that Dame Dash hasn't been a meaningful contributor to the hip-hop industry in decades. After Jay-Z parted ways with him, Dame struggled to replicate that same level of success on his own. Nearly every project he's attempted since then has either failed or fizzled out quietly. His reputation, once built on confidence and leadership, has been overshadowed by arrogance and conflict. Figures like Cameron and 50 Cent know this. They understand that working with Dame today carries more risk than reward. His past behavior, the confrontations, the ego, the inability to adapt, has left him isolated in an industry that thrives on evolution and collaboration. And while Dame still tries to portray himself as a boss or a chairman, even claiming executive roles like at Revolt, those assertions have been publicly debunked. The truth is hard to ignore. The once celebrated mogul now appears to be a legacy that no longer exists, pride preventing him from truly rebuilding what is lost. At this point, even Dame Dash critics are hoping he comes to a moment of clarity, a realization that nearly everyone he's been feuding with has moved on and leveled up. While his peers have evolved, built empires, and adapted to new eras of business, Dame seems stuck in the same cycle of bitterness and blame. Recently, he even resurfaced old grievances against Jay-Z, but the contrast between them couldn't be more striking. Jay has continued to rise, expanding his reach into billion-dollar ventures, cultural influence, and long-term legacy, while Dame appears to have stagnated. It's a tough truth to face. Growth requires humility, and holding on to resentment keeps you frozen in time. No matter how brilliant or ambitious someone once was, refusing to evolve ultimately becomes a self-imposed cage. For Dame Dash, this reality has played out in public view. Once regarded as one of hip-hop's most fearless businessmen, a man who helped shape Rockefeller Records into a cultural empire, he now stands in stark contrast to the moguls he once mentored and stood beside. Jay-Z, once his business partner, has gone on to build billion-dollar ventures, earning respect as both a visionary and a cultural leader. Meanwhile, Dame's story has been clouded by public disputes, failed ventures, and a refusal to adjust to a new era of entertainment and entrepreneurship. At his peak, Dame Dash represented everything powerful about independence in hip-hop. He spoke about ownership, control, and dignity in a system that often exploited artists. That message was revolutionary in its time, and many of today's creators still echo his ideas. Yet ironically, the very principles that made him a trailblazer also became his downfall. Confidence turned into arrogance, assertiveness into stubbornness. The industry changed, shifting from physical album sales and label hierarchies to digital platforms and strategic partnerships, but Dame didn't. He clung to old methods, expecting loyalty from an industry that rewards adaptability over nostalgia. Over the years, the weight of pride and unresolved resentment has chipped away at his legacy. Instead of reinventing himself or finding new ways to lead, he became known more for feuds and lawsuits than innovation. Each conflict, whether with Jay-Z, Cameron, 50 Cent, or Charlemagne Tha God, seemed to push him further from relevance. The irony is that many of the people he once battled with have used similar determination and drive to evolve. Jay-Z built business empires. 50 Cent transitioned into film and television. Even younger artists, who once looked up to Dame for inspiration, have diversified their paths, learning the value of adaptation. Meanwhile, Dame remains caught between the glory of the past and the reality of the present. Financially, the effects are clear. Once associated with luxury and success, Dame has faced multiple reports of debt, legal battles, and lost opportunities. Professionally, he's become isolated, an outsider looking in on an industry he helped shape. And physically, years of stress and frustration have taken their toll, visible in his weariness and tone. The same fire that once made him an unstoppable force now flickers unevenly, often flaring up in outbursts rather than inspiration. But beyond the personal struggles lies a universal lesson. Pride can be both a source of strength and a silent destroyer. It drives ambition, but when left unchecked, it blinds a person to growth. Dame's story reminds us that legacy isn't just built on what you create, it's built on how you evolve. The entertainment world doesn't stand still. Technology changes, audiences shift, and the rules are rewritten every decade. Those who succeed learn to adapt without losing their essence. Those who refuse become relics of their own glory. What makes Dame's story even more tragic is that he once understood this better than anyone. In his prime, he was a visionary who spotted potential before the world did. Whether it was in Jay-Z's music, Kanye West's production, or the idea of artists becoming brands. But somewhere along the way, the hunger to prove himself overshadowed the humility needed to grow. Instead of embracing collaboration, he viewed independence as isolation. Instead of building new bridges, he focused on old wounds. Now, as former rivals and partners thrive, Dame stands as a symbol of what happens when success is not followed by self-reflection. Every entrepreneur faces that crossroads, to evolve or to fade. The ones who survive learn that reinvention isn't betrayal, it's survival. Even for Dame, redemption is not impossible. But it begins with acceptance, the courage to admit that the world has changed and that he must change with it. In the end, this saga isn't just about ego or beef. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when you stop evolving. Everyone around Dame has moved forward, carving out new paths and embracing new opportunities. The question is whether he can finally release the grudges, silence the pride, and step into a new chapter with humility. The door to growth never truly closes, but the longer you wait to walk through it, the harder it becomes to find your way back.